All right. Well, thanks everybody. Man, that was a great talk from Bob. I'm going to follow on to a lot of the stuff that Bob mentioned and really just add on to what he said, maybe take it from a different angle. So thanks for coming to my talk. Like Louis introduced, I'm Jeff Best. I collect hobbies for a living. I enjoy doing things or having hobbies that encourage me to do things, that engage my brain in different ways, that challenge me to do new things. And that's important, and I think an important part of what I'm going to get into later. So, but as you probably gathered from the title of the talk, the title of the talk is pretty loaded. This is a talk about how to succeed in getting a job and growing your career from someone who thought these talks were a waste of time when I was in school. We're going to talk about what you need to know, how to be comfortable talking like an expert to people who want to hire you, and how to not put your foot in your mouth in the process. So what this talk is not, this is not a resume writing workshop. This is not, how to polish this up and, schmooze a bunch of people. It's not how to shark your way up the corporate ladder and burn a bunch of bridges along the way. This is about a way of approaching your personal and professional life in a way that's meaningful and enjoyable and hopefully profitable. So before I tell you how to know everything, I'll defend the idea that we do need to know everything. So why do we need to know everything? It's because of these job postings that you see here. This is an entry-level job posting that wants you to have 46 years of experience or more. More is better, right? So job postings like this aren't uncommon, and people really do apply for these jobs. There's some psycho out there who rewrote his resume just to apply for this job. So while you probably don't need this job, you're going to need a job eventually, right? And when you're applying for those jobs, you're still going to be competing with the same kinds of people who were confident enough to apply for this job. So you're playing in that same swimming pool as these people, no matter what job you're applying for. So this process here is designed to weed the people out who are not confident enough to apply to these, who want to self-select out of that. And so how do you get the confidence? How do you get the experience to really pull it off to apply for jobs like this? How do you learn all of this stuff? Well, you can't, and you have to accept that. So you right now, you're part of a group, and you will be for the rest of your life. So sometimes you get to define that group. You get to define it when you invite people to your Discord server or when you include people in your hair metal band. And other times you don't. So at work and school, you have to function as a larger part or a part of a larger organization. So what the hell am I saying, and why does this help you? Like, what does this actually mean? Well, let me give you an example. I'm going to make this more appropriate for 2021. This is not a hair metal band, but it's the first group of Cal Poly students to make it in nationals in the collegiate cyber defense competition. I know that because I'm right here. So for those of you unfamiliar with CCDC, it's a competition that simulates a barely functioning business network that's vulnerable to all sorts of attacks. And our job was to go in and secure that network from a real live red team, a team of professional hackers, all while keeping the business running. So that means completing help desk tickets, installing a printer, provisioning new users on a network, and so on and so on, and fixing stuff when it went down. So if something got attacked, remediating that. So to succeed in this kind of competition, you really do have to know everything. So as an example, this is just a small subset of the stuff that we had to know at the time. And it just grows every year. It's bigger and different now. But this is what we started with. So it's overwhelming. It's that job posting all over again. It's 46 years of experience. And nobody can be an expert in all of this, especially us. When I started, I was a junior with really, barely 2 years of experience in this kind of stuff. And we hadn't even put it out there in this format yet. Like, we hadn't even organized all the knowledge that we needed to know. It was the first year of WRC CDC, and we were just trying to swim upstream and, just trying to figure it out as we went. So I was not and am not an expert in all of these. Of what you see here, I was expected to know these. It's still a ton. It's still way more than any human being can become an expert in inside of a year. And remember, we didn't need to understand these just to pass a test to say, yeah, Linux is an operating system. No. We need to know this well enough to answer whatever real task they threw at us. So any misconfiguration, to figure out what's wrong even when it looked like it was running right, to recover from an attack, to set it up from scratch. So of what I was asked to do, this is what I actually felt competent doing. Don't tell my teammates. It's a much smaller list, but I don't exist in a vacuum, and I didn't exist in a vacuum. I practiced with those other guys in that picture almost every day for over a year. For with most of them, it was over 2 years. It was a lot of time. So we knew what we could rely on each other to do, and we knew what we were responsible for ourselves. So we all functioned as one bigger unit. So each of us was a specialist in what we knew, and together we really did know everything, or close enough to it. We ended up placing first in regionals in our second year and then fourth in nationals. So employers recognize this. Employers recognize when you're able to be that expert and to know everything. They saw the depth and breadth of knowledge that came from working together and not working alone. They didn't hire one of us. Boeing picked us all up as a group. But so enough ego stroking. This is why is this effective, and how does this apply to you? How does it allow all of us to know everything? So let's revisit that list, but we're going to organize it a little differently this time. So I've sorted all the things that I knew on the left side and all the things that I didn't know on the right side. And then I categorized each of those by subject area. So when we take a look at it, something magic happens. So the stuff that I didn't know becomes 1 or 2 10-minute conversations away from something I do know. So if I needed help with VLANs or just understanding them at a fundamental level, I ask Davey. If I don't know what's wrong with terminal services, I ask Tin. And we have a 10-minute discussion, and then I know enough. I'm not an expert by any means, but I know enough to get what I need to do done. So we all do this all the time in everyday life. Like think of the last time you asked for a takeout recommendation, or a new song to listen to, or a new game to play. We have all these ad hoc communities that we create to learn and make better decisions, and we lean on these to feel confident about doing new things, especially in school. So we don't often think of these school communities as a part of our professional life, but that's a mistake. So it's also a mistake to conflate asking for help with asking someone to do something for you. Those guys in that picture, if I needed a favor from them, I know they would do it for me, but I also knew that they weren't going to do my job for me. That there's a line that you cross at some point where, yeah, I'm just doing your work for you. And that's, we all know that person, right? Who's just taking and not giving back. Communities are two-way streets. And if you're not giving back to these communities, then you're not going to be a part of that community for very long. This is not a list of people who can do your job for you. We're information workers. So these are knowledge sharing communities. As knowledge workers, we need to know a bench of people that we can tap for knowledge and be able to transfer knowledge back to them. So how do you build that community? How do you start from scratch? Say you're a freshman, this is your first year, it's COVID, you haven't met anyone on campus because you can't. So how do you build it? You're on your way. You're here today, you're learning something for yourself, and you're improving yourself. There's a ton of cool and way more interesting talks that you'll learn about today. They'll teach you more skills that you'll use in everyday life. And the more you learn in general, the more you're going to be able to give back to those groups. So if you're struggling to find a group, and again, it's one of the biggest bummers about not being on campus. It's harder to forge those relationships over the internet, but people have been doing it for years. It's not impossible. Join the Swift Discord, join Fast Discord, join everybody's Discord. Find something that you like and latch onto that and figure out a way to contribute. Sometimes the way you're going to contribute is a very, very small way. It's going to be doing something that nobody else wants to do. It's going to be documenting a process, writing a forensic report for an ITC competition. These little things that you do while you're in school, they're all going to add up and add to that life experience, and it's going to pay off later down the line. So I truly mean that, and I'm going to get into a very explicit example of that. Writing a forensics report for ITC is exactly what changed my career trajectory to where I'm at today. That one little itty bitty thing that I did in college. In my sophomore year, somebody asked me to join their team. They knew I knew nothing. I was participating in Swift. They knew of me. They trusted that I could do a menial task for them, and they asked me to write a report for their forensics competition. So we did a couple of workshops, and then we did the competition. And thanks to them, not to me, make no mistake, thanks to them, we were able to earn first place. We won a few bucks, and that was that, or so I thought. Later that year, we went to DEF CON. One of the judges recognized me at DEF CON. I was standing in the lockpicking village, a drunk 20-something. Somebody taps me on the shoulder and says, "Hey, you look familiar." And the scary man with the beard is behind me, asking me weird questions. And he's drunk too. It was DEF CON. And he ends up offering me a job right there on the spot. And that's what started my career in computer forensics. Had I not spent those couple of days just writing a report or learning how to write a report for that, my life would have ended up very different. And I'll show you how different in a second. But take advantage of those opportunities. You're going to get a lot of these weird things to do. This is your time while you're in school to say yes to a lot of those things and get that experience in a lot of very different things. So I'll concede that there's a wide gap between testifying on a witness stand, like you saw in that last image, and writing a report for a school competition. There was a large number of years in between those two things. And there was a lot of life experience that I learned in the process. But I do want to touch on when you do get to that point, when you are on your own, when you can't tap that community, and you're on the spot, and you're trusted to give answers or to perform a task for somebody, and you really feel like, oh my God, this is my test, and if I fail this, then what the hell's going to happen? That imposter syndrome. I remember the first time I sat in a lawyer's office by myself. They'd hire me to see if there were flaws in the U.S. government's case against their client. Super high stakes stuff. So the quality of my work directly affected the number of days that their client would or would not spend in jail. And at the time, I was a 20-something, not drunk this time, but I was a 20-something-year-old nerd who knew something about computers and forensics. That if you wanted to boil it down, that's where I was at. I think we've all felt this. You're unqualified for this job. You're looking at that job posting from before. I'm not qualified for that. Whatever. I'm just going to pass on it. Or what if I sound stupid speaking to, I don't know how many people we got now, dozens of people on the internet. Or what if I don't deserve to be taken seriously? All these, intrusive thoughts about imposter syndrome. That transition from college to a career is littered with these feelings of, just inadequacy. They're not true. They're not rooted in fact. And it's where that phrase, I think it's where that phrase, fake it till you make it, came from. It's important to take stock in yourself, like really think about the positive things that you can achieve. This isn't like a, kumbaya, believe in yourself thing, but like, think about it. I was in that lawyer's office because they hired me. They chose me to tell a story, to figure out what happened on somebody's computer. So when you score the interview, think about it not as somebody trying to rip you to shreds. Think about it as someone who sees promise in you. So they think you're worth talking to you for an hour. Don't waste your time thinking about the ways you can prove them wrong, because that's, going back to what Bob said, there's a million reasons that, a million things that you can think of that are outside of your control. You have control over proving them right. So do that. Put your effort there. And that's how I managed to bring myself back down to earth in the lobby of that law firm. I was waiting for them to call me in. The stakes are high. There's literally some dude's life in the balance. And the level of trust that they had in me was daunting, but I was going to prove them right. So you'll run into these moments, testifying on the stand, not testifying on the stand, but like situations where you can't draw on the skills or the community that you've built, that you're put on the spot. You don't know the answer, and that's okay. You don't always have to know the answer. Just like Bob said when he was talking about that talk that he gave, hot off the heels of a talk that he gave that was great, and a talk that bombed. You don't want to be that guy who's bombed. Take it from people who have bombed before. I've bombed. We've all done it. You don't have to overextend yourself. If you don't know something, that's okay. Take it from me, someone who's literally had to stay on the witness stand. I don't know. Think about that. Someone's fate is in the balance, and I didn't know the answer to a question that a lawyer's asking me. So you know what happened there? Nothing. We moved right along because it was not my responsibility in that moment to give him that answer. There's a time and place where you need to give your input, but you always need to be truthful. And when you're put on the spot like that, you're going to be okay. Being truthful is going to work out for you better than not trying to be an expert than trying to be an expert in something that you're not, rather. So believe it or not, though, even when you're put on the spot by yourself, your phone's off, whatever, your community is going to help you be more effective in that situation too. So you remember that list of CCDC tasks? Here's where the list of the ones I thought I was competent in. That's where I would scale myself or score myself on this scale here. And here's the ones that I didn't feel great about. So the constant exposure to those things that I didn't know, I knew about them, I knew of them, I'd heard of them, and I knew that my friends knew how they worked. These things that I didn't know and mostly didn't care about helped to ground me. It gave me that confidence to know that I'm not an expert in this. I'm far from an expert. It helped move the dial from the peak of that on the left down to something where I could say, okay, I really don't know the answer to that. Not only did I recognize when I needed to trust my friends with certain things, though, I became more confident in my own skills because they trusted me back. So that reinforced the idea that I really was an expert in a couple of things. So that exposure across subjects is super important, and it's something that I value more the older I get. For example, a lot of the things that I thought were stupid and a waste of time in my GEs, they make a lot more sense now. So it turns out I was here on the scale for a lot of my classes, namely MHR, Tom, whatever, those classes that are a lot softer, I would say, than your technical classes. And that's not to say every class is going to be a gold mine waiting to be discovered. You're going to have bad classes and you're going to have bad teachers. But sometime 10 years from now, that one dumb thing that you remember from MHR class might actually start to make sense. And those random tidbits are going to help add context to your everyday life, your personal life and your professional life. So the things you hear your friends talking about, that article that you read only the headline on in Reddit, those put you there, right where we see on this chart. You feel good enough that that's why Reddit's so addictive. That's why we have so many armchair experts on a lot of things. Learning things outside of your specialty is helpful because it helps you identify where you fit in the world. But learning these things is really only meaningful when you can move the needle to somewhere where you don't make assumptions that get you into trouble. So if you really want to dive into something, you need to engage with the world. You need to ask your friend about the thing that they mentioned. You need to really read the Reddit article, and that'll help round yourself out and move that needle down the curve a little bit. So I want to back up a little bit to a previous version of this chart, the one that shows what I do or did and don't know. And I want to underscore how you get from the star on the left to the star on the right. You can take all the classes you want. You can read all the articles you want. You can have all the conversations you want, but you're going to peak roughly, about the star on the left. Moving beyond that requires more than just knowing. It requires doing. So let's take, for example, this is Sasha DeJulian. She didn't become a championship rock climber from watching YouTube. She did it by climbing rocks, right? It's a stupid, simple concept, but it gets lost a lot. And I know I've definitely fallen for this trap. Like, you learn a lot about a subject and you think you're pretty good at it. You become an expert at it. But until you start to apply this knowledge, there's a breakdown between what you know and applying it in the real world. You're not here. You are here, rather. You are here when you don't apply that knowledge. You're not over here. So until you put that into motion, make sure that you understand where you are on the scale, and that'll help you when you come to those the situations where you think you're hot shit, and it turns out you bomb a talk that you didn't prepare for. That's not shade at Bob. That's that's shade at myself. I've definitely given those talks too. So how do you put that into motion though? Like we have so much information, so much knowledge available at our fingertips. We all know that. That's a given. But how do you take that and figure out how to actually get started physically doing something? Because that is a gap that a lot of people struggle with, myself included. You have the ability to learn enough to start to do something by building those communities. Maybe it's joining a new Discord channel for an open source project, or an IRC channel for something. If you're really old and stubborn like me, if you really want to learn something, you take that start and you use it to do something. So you take that little like incremental nudge from the community, because we've all done this. I call Davey when I need help with something network related, or I call another friend when I need help with something music related. We all know those people that we can count on to help get us physically moved in that direction, help get started actually doing something. So, and with technology, it's even easier, because once you have that first step of knowing how to take that knowledge to actually apply it to doing something, you can virtualize everything now. You can break something, you can fail hard, you can fail fast, and there's really no consequence other than you learning something. It's great. It's man, we really do live in the future. It's great to be able to do these things for free. Really, if you have a physical computer, most of the time this costs nothing to try out other than your time. So learning how to do these things, actually physically putting them into practice, will give you the confidence and the ability to compete against those who are applying for those jobs. Like, think about that job description. You do have the ability to learn enough to actually get to maybe the bottom part of the Dunning-Kruger scale, but at least you'll have more knowledge than those people who they're way up at the peak of where they think they know what they're talking about and they really don't. You'll be able to outperform those even if you're less confident about it. So eventually you're going to find something throughout all of this. You're in school, you're going to keep challenging yourself to do new and exciting things, and eventually you're going to find something that you fall in love with. You're going to be the expert in that, and other people are going to come to you and ask for help for that. For me, that was wireless hacking. I was fascinated. How did WEP and WPA work? How did different access points connect to all the individual hosts without stomping on each other? I was hooked. And this is not my laptop, but this is a pretty accurate representation of what my laptop looked like, though I was not running Windows. I was running Linux. Drilling holes in the side of my laptop at the time and hooking up antennas. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I got my my ham radio certification, all kinds of cool stuff. Like, not cool in the traditional sense, but I thought it was cool. So that knowledge, though, of me diving super deep into wireless networks helped reinforce all those things in that left-hand column that we had before. Like, it sounds like really disconnected from it, but it helped me better with Apache and incident response and security policies. All this stuff is incidentally reinforced by the level of depth that I got into one skill. So, so dive into a skill, and it's going to help grow your knowledge base. And so we can visualize that here. So you have your specialty, and around that you have your competencies they're positively reinforced by that. And then you have your community that you're positively reinforcing and is reinforcing you back. So they all build both ways. It's all a two-way street. So the things that you learn you're going to feed back into it, and it's going to feed back into you. So we talked about weird career trajectories. Bob did too, and he did a fantastic job kind of describing where making a hard choice or making an uncomfortable choice really changes that trajectory. So I want to just highlight how these little things can really move your career in one way or another. So it starts now. You're in school. Put yourself out there. You're going to have one or two of those events that change the trajectory of your career. For me, that was here, these two things. But by putting yourself out there, you're going to grow your knowledge in your community, which are further open doors for you. For me, that was playing in ITC, that writing that forensic report. That I was taking a backseat to some other folks, but it got me that exposure. I didn't have to be an expert then. I was an expert later, but I didn't have to be an expert then. That don't artificially hold yourself back. You're going to get that experience as you go along. And there were failures too along the way. I lost in CCDC in 2008. That didn't stop me from playing again or trying to do better next time. We all have failures too. Like, this isn't a totally everything went great in my life. Like, no, I've had setbacks. I continue to have setbacks. Every day. So, but yeah, those things. That you really need to put yourself out there. You're not going to get what you don't ask for. Just like Bob mentioned, Bob asked to meet new clients. He, after sitting there and saying he never wanted the door to open again, just slipped the check under the door, he went back to his boss years later and said, I liked talking to a client. Put me in front of more clients. And it's okay to change your mind. Here you visually see I changed my mind a lot. and it works out. What worked for you 10 years ago or 5 years ago or last year might not be working for you now. And it's okay that happens. You need to reevaluate as you go. We got hired at Boeing as a result of CCDC, and I ended up hating it. So what did I do? I did what Bob said. I controlled what I could, and I made something happen. I saved enough to quit and start my own company. I loved forensics. It turns out that one stupid report that I wrote ended up launching, the rest of my career for almost a decade. So I went and did that, and I loved that until I didn't. I don't hate it now, but it was time for me to move on, to keep growing, to keep learning. I was getting a little complacent, and just like Bob said, if you're feeling that way, it's time to do something uncomfortable, and that's why I moved on to doing product management. And that's a lot of why I moved on. So, yeah, everything that Bob said, totally agree with. Totally want to echo that too, because he's right. So, to circle back to this, eventually this job posting is not a list of impossible things. It's a list of experiences that you can use to get your resume through the LinkedIn word filter and wow someone in an interview. Because really that's your goal with submitting these job applications. You're trying to get through the AI, whatever, or it's less sophisticated than that, but you're trying to get the interview. And if you put yourself out there enough, to be perfectly honest with you, job opportunities are going to come to you instead of the other way around. So I want to just close with 5 points, similar to what Bob mentioned. Be good with something, share it with your community, learn outside the classroom, learn by doing, and remember you're rad. Be good at something because it's going to enable the rest of these things. Share it with your community because that's how you're going to get that exposure, round out that knowledge, be the person that's employable. Learn outside the classroom. I don't think there's a teacher that you have that's going to say that you're going to learn everything that you need to know inside of the classroom. I sure as hell didn't. I would be shocked if I learned 50% of what I learned in school inside of a classroom. And you're in tech. That's just how it is. You're going to have to, if you want to succeed in your professional career, you're going to have to do that at some point. And it might as well be now when you got the free time and you don't have, a family that you're supporting or a mortgage or something like that. Use this time to really figure out how to learn yourself, how to teach yourself rather. Learn by doing. What we talked about it. Knowing is not doing. And until you do something, you don't really know it. So, and teach it. I mean, share it with the rest of your colleagues. Give a talk at Swift. Do something with it. All these experiences are going to help round you out. And remember, you're at you're here, right? You're trying, and props to you. That's super appreciated. You're going to appreciate that more than anybody else, and you're going to reap the benefits of doing that. So you are worth hiring. If you get that interview, it's because somebody believes in you, and so don't talk yourself out of it. Don't shoot yourself in the foot because you're not sure of it. Let somebody else make that decision. You prove them wrong, though, or prove them right. So, and this, this was my community a lot of years ago. It still is. I still talk to more than half these guys every day. Some of these guys are speaking today. Some of the guys that followed us are speaking today too. So hi Davey, hi Swiss, hi Wasabi. But yeah, this is a great community to build. When I was in school, you need to build your own community because they will follow you for decades to come. That this picture was taken over 12 years ago, and I still talk to these people every day. So build it now. I see that there are some questions. I want to get to those, and if you have other questions, please put them in the chat, and I'll get to them. So let's see. Um, so Dr. Manson, thank you for chiming in. I became a leader as a student. What drove me to do that, and what advice do you have about becoming one? Um, I I saw a community that I wanted to be a part of. That's really what it boils down to. That community that you saw in that last picture, I wanted to be a part of a team that learned about security and that knew it well enough to share it with others. We gave talks every week in Swift, just like you guys have workshops now every week too, which is great. That's insane. I'm super glad to see that you guys are building on that and trying to transfer that knowledge on a better scale or bigger scale rather. Find something you like and you're going to want to be a part of that and want to grow that. It doesn't have to be security. Just find something that you want to champion. A great question. Thanks, Dr. Manson. Alex, how did you come back from losing CCDC and what did you learn from it? So that was interesting. So that was pretty crushing in 2008. We were, man, we were one of those people. I'll say it. We had that toxic pride that Bob mentioned that probably nobody else wanted to work with us. We were insufferable. Still to a degree today, I would say that for myself anyway. And so taking that hit, like it's hard, man. Not winning CCDC. We were new. We were sure we were going to get it, and we didn't. But we recognized where we failed. We did that postmortem. We did that self-assessment, and we recognized, hey, okay, these are the areas that we screwed up. We thought blowing away our systems and rebuilding from scratch, that's something that we could have done, and we did do. There was something we were capable of doing. It was not the right strategy. We were mistaken there. And so the next year, we went in with a different strategy. We practiced to that different strategy for the next year. We said, look, these are the mistakes they made. We're going to live with whatever garbage they throw at us, and we're going to make it work to the best extent. So figure out the lessons learned and practice to those. That's a great question. Thanks, Alex. How do we prepare for competitions? So the competitions, we met, we talked every night on IRC. We were always doing something. Some of it was very informal, where, a lot of the time Davey would be learning something because he's Davey and he's always learning something. And he would tell us about it. He'd pretty much narrate how it was going. And then when it was successful, he would share how it worked. And somebody would say, oh, that's really interesting. Let me figure out how to do that too. It might be one or two of us every time this happened. And sometimes it was none of us because it was just so Davey that none of us felt capable of doing it. But the formal part was every week we set aside time on Saturdays and we sat down in the lab and we pretty much made an agenda. It was almost like what you would call like a scrum meeting now. Like we figured out where we were at, where we wanted to go, and how we were going to get there. So what do we need to learn this week? What's something that we're weak on that we really need to sharpen up? And then that week, it wouldn't just end on at dinner time on Saturday. We would keep going the rest of the week and then try to report back on it the next week. So thanks for that question, Kevin. When you make a drastic career and role switch, how do you handle being the expert in the old role versus average in the new role? So yeah, that's a great question. Because in product, I love product. A year under my belt now, and I feel like I'm finally getting it. But that first year is rough. Feeling average is definitely where I was when I started, and below average, in fact, when I first started. How do you handle being an expert in the old role and average in the new role? I'd say that so let me go back to this visualization. So that's where this comes in. So my specialty and what I do were no longer aligned. My specialty or sorry, what I did was more, in my competencies and partly in my community's knowledge rather than inside of my specialties. So having to grow that new specialty is where I was at. So it's a hard adjustment and it takes a lot of work, but it's not something that's impossible. You're going to have these career changes in your life, and being comfortable preparing for those and adjusting to those is something that you're going to have to do. Take it. There's a lot of groups when I worked at Boeing that were getting laid off, and these were programs where they had worked on the same satellite for 30 years. That was their entire career. Now they're in their late 50s, early 60s, and they're getting let go because that satellite's finally being retired. But what did they learn in the meantime? They learned how to be really solid experts at that satellite. And that's a skill that doesn't transfer anywhere. And you don't want to be there. You want to be ready for what's going around the corner. Like Bob said, if you're feeling comfortable, get uncomfortable, because that's where you need to be to keep your career alive and to grow in your career. What advice would you give to someone joining these competitions with barely any knowledge of navigating the Linux command line? You have so many resources now. It's great. Do it. Just get in there and do it. Start doing it now. For me, what worked at the time, because we didn't have VMware when I started this, is I blew away my Windows install and installed Linux and said, okay, I'm going to keep doing this until I need Windows. And it wasn't until after I graduated college that I needed Windows. So if that was the case at the time, you're probably better off now, as far as Linux supporting Linux support of software that you'll need. I just immerse yourself in it. It's easier to do than you think. It's daunting at first. You're going to have a lot of struggles, and those struggles are going to teach you more than anything else. If you're not struggling through that, you're really not going to get a handle on Linux or the command line. So, if you really, you have to juggle a lot of things. You have schoolwork that needs to get done. Your computer can't be out of commission to get those things done, to join classes and all that, respected and understood. Virtualize it. You have the capability of virtualizing it. VirtualBox is free. Try that out. Best advice for graduates on becoming a subject matter expert. Yes, keep doing what you're doing. Just keep diving into it. You can contribute to projects. There's GitHubs for everything. You can fork your own and create something else new. It doesn't have to be code. It can be a process. It can be, like for me, it was wireless hacking. It's not code or anything. I was just the guy that gave talks about it. And could share and help people out and recommend wireless cards for getting into that. Be that, you become a subject matter expert by becoming the subject matter expert, really. Put yourself out there. Prove it. Prove that you're the subject matter expert. Give the talks at Swift. As far as graduates on becoming SMEs, come back to Swift. Put that on your resume. Come give a guest lecture. Volunteer. All that adds up and lends itself to becoming that subject matter expert. What were your thoughts and feelings on going to your first con? I definitely want to go to DEF CON when we're able to meet humans again. I loved DEF CON when it was something that I still went to. It changed a lot. I haven't been in 10 years, to be perfectly honest with you. It's definitely worth going to. It's definitely worth experiencing. Go to one. If you never go again afterwards, great. But at least you can say you did it and you understand it. If I had not gone, I would still want to go now. I think I'm kind of conned out, especially DEF CON, but it's still worth visiting and understanding. And you get a lot of read into a lot of the culture that's there too. It's interesting. It's not something that I'm a part of anymore, but definitely something worth going to. What is a ham radio? Do I have one on my desk? No, I don't. I bet you I have it in here. It is a walkie-talkie for adults. No, I don't got it in here. It's a walkie-talkie that can go miles, really. There's handheld ones. I have one in my truck too. It allows you to talk for miles and miles and miles, either over voice or over Morse code. Super nerdy, not cool in the least, but I enjoyed it. What's the difference between interviewing virtually and face to face? So that's a great question. I've recently interviewed a bunch of places. Because that's another thing I want to touch on. Always accept the interview. If you're offered an interview somewhere, take it. because when you need that experience and you need to be fresh for it, you need to be fresh for it. And you don't want to have to kind of rehearse it and try, brush the rust off of those skills when you really, really want that job. So always take the interview. You can always turn them down. You can always say no, but take the interview. Like, keep those skills fresh. Interviewing remotely is it's a lot different. It's harder to read folks. I haven't really broke it down into the pros and cons. The pros are I don't wear shoes. That's fun. The cons are you don't get that handshake. You don't get that interpersonal, that real in-person thing. It's not impossible to land a job remotely. I mean, plenty of people have done it. I practically did. I got in like as the door was closing behind me when COVID shut down where I'm at now. And my onboarding was virtual. That's I would say the onboarding part is more different than the interviewing part when you're starting virtually. So if you do move into a career and start your career during this time, that's going to be a lot more difficult, to be perfectly honest with you. Find that person who's willing to point you in the right direction and take you on the virtual tour of the organization. It's so hard to when you can't like put an org chart together, or you don't have that and nobody's really guiding you or showing you, where the supply room is and stuff like that, the virtual supply room, where your wiki is, all that stuff. Find that person that can help you do that, because that's going to enable you to hit the ground running a lot faster. I know some organizations don't do that as well, but it's on you to be successful. Nobody owes you anything. You got to do it yourself. And if you're not feeling successful, go and change that. You do have control over that. Just like Bob mentioned, you have control over your own success. So seek that out. How did you meet your mentors when you were going through CPP, if you had any? So a lot of my professors were mentors, especially the folks that were still employed in the private sector. They were able to bridge that gap between this is what's happening currently in private sector, and this is what I need to teach you. And so getting to know those folks, especially through extracurriculars, like Ron is very, or Dr. Pike rather, is very active in both. Like he can tie those two together. Dr. Manson is another one where he's got his ear to the ground in figuring out what's going on and translating it into an experience that will teach you. So really just tapping those resources want to help you. Those people want to help you. So make yourself available to them. Put yourself out there and say, hey, I don't know this, but I want to learn more. How do you go about that? Is there a program for that? Again, you're in control of your success. So seek it out. That's a great question, Kevin. I'm going to try to knock these out quick. Okay, it looks like we only got one more. What are some tips you would offer someone who's new to Cal Poly and looking to create a community similar to yours in order to build? I currently have little no experience in cybersecurity. Well, you're not alone, Brianna. Thank you for that. I knew almost nothing about cybersecurity when I started too. It's a lot more difficult now to find those groups because of the virtual situation. But you're participating virtually too is great. Getting on Discord, having those conversations, answering questions and when people have them, when you do know the answer, kind of propping yourself up and showing that you're willing to learn, know, and transfer that knowledge, and then asking questions when you have them too. So figure out what you don't know and figure out a plan for doing that. There's a lot of alumni on the server, myself included, a lot of others who sometimes we have nothing better to do than to help out others. So so ask for that guidance when you need it. So building that community, you can start there and work from there. You'll find those people that you're interacting with on a regular basis and who are close to the same spot as you and who push each other. That's I'll say that's the biggest part of this group here, is that we all pushed each other to learn more. That's a powerful thing, because we all knew that we didn't know it all, even though we ended up thinking that we knew it all. But yeah, pushing each other to succeed. Like that's that community that we want to build. So seek out those people that are pushing you to learn more too, and push them back. What's your take on learning Swift as a first programming language versus Linux? So I'm not a programmer. I couldn't program myself out of a wet paper bag. I can't help you there, but I know that there's plenty of people in the Swift Discord who could. Where are the women in your picture? This was there were not a lot of, that's one of the cool things I think about Swift as it's evolved is the interaction or the involvement of more women. And I'm glad to see that. That's something that definitely was lacking in that picture 10 years ago. And I'm glad to see that it's more inclusive now. Yeah. Any other questions? Looks like we're close to the end, coming up on time. All right. Well, thank you all very much.